I'd like to call this September 25th, 2023 Board of Education regular meeting to order. George, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Gilbane?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stochek?
Here.
Mrs. Hausen?
Here.
All present.
We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda are our district goals. Our district goals remain the same: financial prudence, community engagement, and academic achievement and growth. Strongsville City Schools recently received a 5-star overall rating as part of this year's Ohio State Report Card. Our district is one of only 75 state school districts to receive the highest rating, which for state report card is defined as significantly exceeds state standards. The 5-star rating is a testament to not only the daily work being done in our schools by teachers, support staff, and administrators, but also to our community and their continued support and partnership with our district. We'll have a more detailed look at our state report card results at the next board meeting on Thursday, October 12th. I'd like to say congratulations to Dr. Ryba and our leadership team and our parents, students, staff. It's a great thing that we got this rating, and I just want to thank everybody who was involved in making that happen. Next on the agenda is recognitions, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. We are going to pause the OSBA Student Achievement. Haley and Sharon have been hard at work getting the new recognitions going for this school year, and so we're excited to have those starting in October. So we will start honoring students and staff next month. However, I am going to turn it over to Jenny Pelko, our Assistant Superintendent, to share a recommendation that we will have further on in the agenda. So Jenny.
So as you may know, our longstanding varsity baseball coach, Doug Cicerci, has elected to kind of resign at this point and has built a wonderful varsity baseball program. And thrilled to announce that we have his successor here in the audience. Colin Pecoraro is going to be named, pending your approval this evening, as our next Strongsville varsity baseball coach for the district. Colin comes to us from Firelands High School, where he currently coaches the varsity softball team there. And in his very first year of coaching, he was named the Coach of the Year for Lorain County for that program. So that says a lot about his ability to build a culture very quickly and to enhance already the great program that we have. And I know through the interview process it was shared with me, he has a great vision for the program, and not only to keep going with the winning records that we have, but also to enhance it and make it even better. And one of his priorities is connecting with our youth within the city, and really looking at the comprehensive program from when kids start out with baseball all the way through high school. So Colin also has coached at our Premier Ohio and Stallions baseball club teams as a head coach, so he's very familiar working with baseball and kids overall. With that, Colin, I'll let you kind of come up to the podium if you want to introduce yourself, and just thrilled to have you here back in Strongsville.
Thank you. No, it's an honor to be here. It was an honor to be chosen as the head coach of the Strongsville varsity program. Growing up in Strongsville, I've always loved the community. It's always been very big to me, and it's just great to be back and hopefully, again, build that culture from the ground up at the youth level all the way up and just continue a growing success and culture here. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you, Colin.
Congratulations.
And thank you to Colin's family also for being in the audience. We appreciate it. I know you're extremely proud of him.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Ms. Hausum. We'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Welcome. We can't wait till spring to see those boys out there on the field. Next on the agenda is public comment. I don't have any slips, so there were no public comment tonight. Next is approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes from August 3rd, 2023, August 24th, 2023, September 7th, 2023, and September 14th, 2023. All district video and audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes. And that brings us to our treasurer's report. George.
Thank you, Mrs. Hausum. I have a few items for your consideration tonight and presentation. The first one being the financial report for the month ended August 31st, 2023, which is attached to the agenda. The next, which is along with the presentation, is the 2024, the fiscal year 2024 annual appropriation measure and setting the annual budget for the year. I do have the presentation of the annual budget along with the budget forecast. So put up on the screen. So for the annual budget, this is all of our funds. Normally when I'm presenting the 5-year forecast, it's just the general fund. With this presentation in the beginning, kind of give a high level on all of our funds, and then we'll kind of go back into the general fund, which is our main operating fund, on a budget forecast. In July, we approved the temporary budget for the general fund and an annual budget for the remainder of the funds. We have until September 30th to approve an annual budget. The reason I like to do the temporary budget is we have a lot of hiring over the summer and various contract changes for purchase services. So as we get those locked in and shored up, I like to use the payroll data that we have in September to build the annual budget as everyone's already begin working. We kind of know what their salary is, the number of positions, and their benefits as well. So that's the main difference between what was presented for July versus now. Our estimated resources for all funds, our general fund, we had an unencumbered beginning balance of $44.5 million with an estimated revenue of $88.7 million for a total estimated resources for the year of $133.2 million. Overall total funds, we had unencumbered beginning balance of $83.4 million, estimated revenues of $120 million, and total estimated resources of $203.6 million. Some of the funds that you see here the first one is our general fund, which is our main operating fund, and then we have what's called the special revenue funds, and those are made up of, you'll see like the 018, the public school support, which is kind of the principals fund for fundraising, and it's to be used for building-wide initiatives to support the building. Local grants, 019, that's where our SEF grants go. The 200 funds, which is our student-managed student activities. The 300 funds, which is district-managed student activities. And then the 400s are state grants. And then the 500 funds are federal grants. The next grouping is debt service. We have our bond retirement fund, which currently is used to pay off the debt for the high school and the middle school. And then we have our 3 capital projects funds, our permanent improvement fund, our building fund, and our 070 capital projects. Then this next grouping is kind of called our enterprise funds, which is the food service fund and the uniform school supplies fund, which those are the school fees that go into this account. And then our internal service funds, which are the internal service rotary fund, which is kind of supposed to be an in and out, and that houses our field trips, the money collected for field trips and other activity where the activity goes in and out. Our self-insurance liability, 023, that's where the Chromebook insurance goes, and then 024 is our medical self-insurance fund. Oops, sorry. And then 035 is what's used to pay our severance for the district, and that's funded by transfers from the general fund. Any questions on the grouping of funds? So the next slide is, the first slide was our estimated resources, the amount of money we have available to spend. The next slide is the annual appropriation, the estimated budget for the year. So in total, the total appropriation for 2024 is $118 million, 87.1 million of which is for the general fund, plus carryover encumbrances or purchase orders from prior school years is 3.4 million for a total appropriation of $122.2 million. And then looking at the general fund appropriation and breaking it down by function, So where this, kind of the money goes throughout the district, how the budget's broken up throughout the district. In a sense, what's supported by instruction, support services, extracurriculars, and debt service. So the total general fund is 87.7 million. 40% goes to regular instruction of that total. 13 million goes, or 15 million or 15% goes to special education. And then taking that whole instruction altogether, it's 56.48 of the total general fund budget goes to instruction. 39.42 goes to support services. 1.73 goes to extracurriculars. And then 0.5% goes to debt service. I won't denote debt service. We have two issues that are paid out of the general fund. It's a 2008 House Bill 264, which was a 15-year debt that was used to do energy projects throughout the district, which was started in 2018. This is the last year for that debt payment, so which is made up of $338,000. So that'll come off after this year, and then we do have a 30-year other debt issuance that was used for the acquisition and remodeling of the preschool center. So that is about $75,000 a year, and the last payment for that is in 2035. So those two payments are out of the general fund. We have the middle school and the high school debt, the 2013 bond issue, that's out of the debt service fund. And we have the COPS issue that was used to build the Muraski addition. That's out of the permanent improvement fund. And then total the amount per pupil that is funded by the general fund, it's taken the dollars divided by the current enrollment for the year is $15,373, which is a $1,000 increase from last year. And then in the last column over here is the breakdown by function of the per pupil amount. So any questions before I get into the general fund? All right, so the general fund is the typical presentation that I've done that you typically see. So for the 5-year forecast, so like do in September when I present the budget, just kind of do a budget forecast of this is what we're budgeting, and if this plays out, how is it going to impact our finances for the years out. In November, we have to do a 5-year forecast, a formal 5-year forecast, which is submitted to ODE and approved by the board. What I like to do there is take these numbers and just kind of project them out of how we're doing for the year, and then for the out years is still based on the budget. And then in May, again, we have to do another 5-year forecast, submit that to ODE, and that begins the budget process for the following fiscal year. And then it kind of cycles where we're constantly updating the 5-year forecast at least 3 times a year. Once we do the budget, we do an update on how we're trending in November, again in May on how we're trending for the rest of the fiscal year, and then in May also begins the process for next school year, and then it's updated again in September. So kind of get you that cycle on how we're constantly updating it. The major assumptions, revenue, which is our, within revenue, our tax collections are our major revenue source. And then the gross collection rate is assumed with a 3-year average of 98.46%, which is made up of the 3-year average of calendar years 21 to 23. On a positive note, for calendar years 22 and 23, the percent has been around the same, which is 99.26, which is an increase from calendar year 21 of 96.85. So hopefully that trend continues where we're collecting majority of the taxes that are billed by the county. Next, taxes are based off assessed valuation. As the valuation of the city changes, it impacts the effective rates. If the valuation goes up, the effective rates go down to kind of keep everyone's tax bill consistent. In collection year 2025 is the 6-year update for the city. I'm assuming within the forecast we'll have an 8% increase in valuations. And how I came to that number was I was looking from the last valuation increase in 22 where we had a 22%, and then used the average Zillow home value increases through the city from what actually happened from 22 to 24, and it's been about an 8% increase. And when the county does it, they're looking at what's the actual value to market currently. So assuming that it's going to be close to an 8%, and then in calendar year 2028 is going to be the 3-year update from that 6-year update. So I have an estimated 5% increase, which has kind of been trending right now. So we'll see how it plays out. Needed to put something in there, and that's how I was able to come up with a good rationale on how to project those increases. And then public utility values, those increased by 1.78%, and during that was during 22 and 23, they increased to 6.4%, and the forecast assumes a 6.4 annual increase, which has been the historical average. And then those are not subject to effective rates, so as those values increase, we see the true increase in those dollars. The next 2 bullet points I still like to show in the, just kind of touch on them in the assumptions, because it shows a decline in tax revenue than an increase in fiscal year 22, where we had the 2.5 million tax refund from the change in valuation from the mall. And then we also have the 2 renewal levies. One is set to expire December 31st, 2023, which generates $9.9 million, and if it expires, collections will continue through December 2024, as the collection year is always 1 year behind the tax year. So that continues through fiscal year 25, and then the other one is through tax year 2026, collections through 2027, and that generates about $8.4 million. State funding, beginning with fiscal year 22, there was a new fair funding formula that was introduced in the 22-23 biennium budget under House Bill 110. Currently, we're in beginning July 1, we're in a new biennium of 24-25. And the good news is that the legislation continued the fair funding formula and continued to fund it. For 24, we'll see an increase of $574,000, and then in 2025, we'll see an increase of $405 for a cumulative increase of $979. And then just to point out that we're still a guaranteed district in this fiscal year and beyond. Within the new fair funding formula, there's the restricted funding that we do get is the success and wellness of $244,000, the career tech and ELL of $35,000, the disadvantaged pupil assistance of $46,000, and gifted $181,000. So those go into the general fund, and then every year we have to report out, did we meet the spending criteria for those dollars. I do want to point out for the success and wellness funds, there was legislation there where in the next couple board meetings, we'll have to present on how we're spending those dollars and post them on our website. Staffing, this is staffing for all funds. Last fiscal year, we had 791 total employees for all positions. This year, it increased by 21 to 812 positions, and which is 49% made up of teachers, or 400 teaching positions. And then looking at that just in the general fund, of that 812, 725 positions are within the general fund, which is a 24 position increase from last school year. And those increases are based on 11 due to new teaching positions, 10 to new aide positions, 1 assistant principal at the middle school, and 2 bus aides. And then in fiscal year 25 and beyond, the forecast assumes 25 positions that we have on ESSER coming onto the general fund once those positions expire. Also, the forecast assumes all union agreements as they're currently defined, including the new SEA contract, which went into place. And then healthcare premiums for fiscal year 2024 have increased by 15%, and then for fiscal years 25 to 27, the projected annual increase is 10%. With healthcare, in 2021, we had a 3% increase, and then 2022, we had a 1.37% increase, while this upcoming fiscal year, we're with a 15% increase, which is based on our claims. So we're trying ways to mitigate our claims, but they are, the premiums are set by our actual claims. So it's something we continue to monitor, and hopefully we can get down in future years. Expenditures. I continue with expenditures, non-personnel. Purchase services. The total amount of purchase services is $7.6 million. For next year, it's a $640,000 increase, and the increase is due to costs and placements for special education placements, instructional costs that were previously on ESSER funds, and then projected increases for utilities. Materials supplies, which makes up $2.8 million, or 3.22% of the budget, is projected to increase by $563,000, which is due to savings or unspent budget from last year. And then capital equipment is about $930,000, and half of which goes to our technology one-to-one initiative. And then also attached to the agenda, I have the detailed 5-year forecasts and assumptions that you could see there as well. And then also, since we're talking about the budget, I also want to include what we've done with ESSER funds through the last 3 years when we got them, starting in fiscal year 21. I won't go through each one, but they're listed within the presentation. We had our ESSER 1 funds of $407,000, our coronavirus relief funds of $285,000, and our broadband connectivity grant of $21,000, all of which were used in fiscal year 2021. In fiscal year 2022, we used $1.3 million of ESSER 2 funds for the items listed there. And again, continuing with our ESSER 3 funds that we used in fiscal year 22 were about $1.1 million for the items listed there. And then for last school year, we had left ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. ESSER 2, the remaining funds had to be used by last year, and then ESSER 3 are expiring after this year. So these are the items that we've used the last 2 years for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. General fund revenues. Total $88.7 million, 73% goes, or 73% or $65 million goes to local taxes, or has come from local taxes, and about 10% is from state foundation. And the rest is made up of the property tax allocation, the TIF revenue of $2.8 million, and then other revenue of $4.5 million. Local taxes, as you can see from 23 to 24, it's pretty consistent. The increase from 22 to 23 was due to the refund that I mentioned, which lowered 2022. And then what's in the peach color is the renewal, assuming the renewal levies renewed, and then in 2028, it's both renewal levies. It's the full of the current one, and then half of the one that's going to come off in 2028. Same thing with the public utility. That's not subject to the effective rate, so as that's been increasing by 6%, so as the dollars on fiscal year 24, we're estimating about $4.6 million. Our state foundation unrestricted. In 24, we're about 8.9, and in the out years, you'll see it gradually increase, which is about the $500,000 increase per year from the current biennial budget. The restricted funds, 2024 is the $500,000 for restricted, and then we see a kind of gradual decline, which is the change of the amounts from restricted to unrestricted. Property tax allocation, that's been pretty consistent. That's the homestead and rollback. And then other revenues, projecting about $7.4 million. I did make a change from the May 5-year forecast to this estimate of interest income, as interest rates have been continued to steady over 5%, and just kind of projecting out our monthly cash-based balances and the amount that we're collecting from meter and interest general fund might be about 2 million. So continue to monitor that, and then, not sure the interest rates in the out years, just kind of conservative estimate of 1.5 for next year. The following year, 1 million, and then 800,000 in the last 2 fiscal years. Other sources, those are made up of refund, advances back to the general fund. For 2024, it's the 197 that was advanced out at the last fiscal year. And so far, we have 8,000 in refunds from prior year expenditures. The spike in 2019 to 2021 was due to BWC premium dividend returns from the Ohio Growers Workers' Compensation, and those were one-time dollars that we can't rely on every year. Any questions on revenues? All right. Expenses. Total expenditures are about 87.7 million, of which 83% or 72 million make up salary and benefits. Then 8.7 purchase services, 3.2 material supplies, and then other objects of 4% and equipment 1%. So salary and benefits is our major expense within district, as naturally we're a people industry. Salaries will continue to see based on our, with the addition of positions and then our negotiated agreements, we'll continue to see an increase in salaries and along with benefits as well. With increase in premium cost, and then also with as salaries increase, the corresponding benefits that are dependent on salary also increase as well. Purchase services, we have the increase of about 600,000 from 2023 to 2024, which was kind of due to unspent savings. And then same with materials and supplies, an increase of about 500,000 for a total of $2.8 million budget. And what that's made up of is instructional supplies of 326,000, office supplies of 82,000, textbooks of 776,000. You'll see the decrease in textbooks in 2025, and the reason for that is this year is an increase because we didn't spend our textbook budget this year, where we carried it forward and for this year to do a bigger adoption. So that was an intentional carry forward. Software about 358,000, fuel 350,000. We've been averaging about 35,000 a month for 10 months. So that's how that number came about. And then building and cleaning supplies of 363,000. Capital outlay, as I mentioned earlier, 930,000, half of which is for the one-to-one initiative, technology initiative. General fund debt, touched on those two bond issues, or those two debt issues within the general fund earlier. And as you can see, the one is going to drop off after this school year. Other objects make up about 1.4 million, and what goes into other objects are county auditor fees. Our county auditor fees of 972,000, liability insurance of 170,000, annual audit fees of 50,000, and 30,000 of bank fees. And then transfers and advances, the one from last year kind of sticks out when we moved the 25 million from the general fund to the 070 fund. But if you look into 2024, we're projecting about 1.6 million, and that's for 400,000 for the termination benefits fund, the severance account, 75,000 for the summer school account, 54,000 for field turf, placeholder for the Kinsner HVAC of 750, and then the athletics of 191,000. And then also the chart is listed the out years as well. And then to wrap it up with the general, on the impact of the general fund, for 2023, we had a carryover of 44.5 million. I should say 46. I think I got to fix this graph. 46 million we had to carry over, the unencumbered balance, $88.7 million of revenues, total expenditures of 87.1. So revenue over expenses about 1.6 million for this year, leaving with an ending cash balance of 45.6 million. And then in the following year, next fiscal year, if the levy is non-renewed, we have to assume within this presentation, or this graph, which is the first slide that's presented to the state, is the renewal is not part of the revenues, so we'll have a $7 million operating deficit, or expenses over revenues of 7 million, with an ending cash balance of 40.6, and then assuming if the renewal levy is renewed, then we add back the 4.9 million, so it gives us a cash balance of 43.5, and then the following fiscal year then will be 15 million. So every year that it's out, the negative increases, and then 2028 we have the 2 levies coming off. And then the next slide shows with the renewal, if both renewals were renewed, next year we would have a operating deficit of 2.2 million, the following year 5.2, then 7.3 and 9.1. So continue to monitor as we're beginning to deficit spend, and we'll continue that to see how it actually trends out, as we've kind of seen, trying to close the gap, but things happen throughout the year where we can incur savings throughout the year, and which closes that gap. And we also have premiums increase 10% each year. Hopefully we're able to mitigate that, which will reduce expenses, but as we've seen this year, it could also go the other way. So things that we continue to monitor, which try and close the gap as much as possible with the revenues over expenditures. So any questions? All right, thank you. I got 2 more items for you guys.
Mrs. Howsam?
Yes.
If I can just compliment George, as always. Some people might find the information boring or tedious or tiring, and I know based on the past weekend, George found it tiring. However, he does a great job every year, and we can count on the numbers because George takes the time to count all the numbers. So I just wanted to thank him publicly for all his hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Rico.
Ditto. Thanks, George.
All of
Thank
us.
you. The next item I have is, as part of the annual budget too, is the budgets for the student activities. There were no changes from what was presented in June coming into the year. There was one change for SCF grants, but we also adopted that change in the July board meeting, but it's reflected in this exhibit as well. That was the only change from going into the year until now. And we'll probably have more changes throughout the year as these activities get going. And then the last item I have is a purchase order after the fact. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that in accordance with ORC for after the fact invoices, the board approves the following invoice for payment, and the treasurer authorized to sign the fiscal certificate is for Amazon Business purchase order 241072 with the PO date of 9/20 in the amount of $3,117, and it was purchased on August 8th of 2022. The reason why it's a year old is we've been holding the invoice. It was a product that was, one of the items on this invoice was damaged, and we returned it, and we were holding it until we got a credit back from Amazon. However, we can't have purchase orders open for that long, so the system closed it, and a new purchase order needed to be entered, which is why we have the after the fact now with the purchase order dates. So we do have to pay it because Amazon's holding our credit now. So we're gonna pay it and then continue to contest with them to try and get the credit. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, George. And just to reiterate what what Rich said, I know you did have a long weekend and you lost a couple days with us moving the meeting, so we really appreciate it. And I really appreciate how you explain it. You make it very understandable. I know it's very intricate and
Right.
it's a big budget, so
Yeah,
thank you.
you're
You
welcome.
do a great job.
And what I like to do too is, especially as I said, I like to wait for the salaries and benefits to hit, because I go by person and project them out for the next 5 years to get what their salary and benefits are gonna be for the next 5 years, to try and get the forecast as accurate as possible.
Well, we appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Riddle.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. I don't have anything specifically under my item for this month, so we'll move to the directors, and we'll start with Steve Bruckner to give his update for the month on business services.
Good evening, everyone. There's one item under Business Services section this month, and it is a resolution for the Ohio Schools Council Bus Cooperative Bidding and Purchasing Program for this upcoming school year. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Strongsville Board of Education approves participation in the Ohio Schools Council Bus Cooperative Bidding and Purchasing Program and authorizes the Ohio Schools Council to advertise and accept bids on said board's behalf as per the specifications submitted for the comparable purchase of two 72-passenger conventional school bus chassis and bodies.
This does require a separate vote. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Steve, can you explain? what we're
Sure.
doing now?
So what this allows the OSC to do, or we have a partnership for many things. What it allows them to do is on our behalf, they gather all the information for the various school districts that they serve. They take a survey, see how many buses everybody needs, and then with that combined cooperative purchasing power, go out and say to the various vendors, what is the absolute best price that you can give? So we've done this ever since I've had this job. I think it predates me by a few years. The process from here is then they'll get back to me with what each bus costs, and then I start to work with Curtis Washington and Steve Vachon to build the buses per our needs and our specifications, and then pray that they come in time for us to use them. So as of right now, I don't know if it's going to be asked, but I got information. We are 5 buses behind in purchasing, and now that doesn't mean I haven't ordered them. I mean, they're behind and coming in. 4
Instead-
conventional buses and 1 mini.
And
Go ahead.
that's from 2 years ago, right?
Pardon, yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's
the
how
first one
backlog-
is
that's how backlog
are
works.
3 buses. Those were 2 conventional 72-passenger and then 1 mini. That was from 2 years ago, and that cost is offset by a grant that we were able to procure. The delivery date on those buses to the vendor is December, and we'll get them then about mid-January. So roughly 2 years after we ordered them. And then the second round, which was 2 more conventional 72-passenger buses, those will be in their shop around March, so we'll get them around April. It takes them about a month to put all the horns and lights and clean it all up for us, per our specifications. So my opinion is we don't want to ever stop buying buses just because we're waiting for more buses, because the rust isn't stopping and deteriorating the buses that we have. We have a fantastic mechanical crew, but they can only do so much with all the salt and the wear and tear. So if we were to stop and just say, well, we'll wait until we get caught up, then we'll be where we were a few years ago. We're ordering 5 buses at a clip, and with those being $300,000 and plus at this point, that would put a hurt in the budget. So it's better to slow down and order a couple buses at a time to anticipate, rather than shut off the tap completely and then have to, open the floodgates, as it were, to complete the analogy, in a few years.
And I do want to add on too, it's just not a Strongsville issue. With the delay, it's an issue across the state. As Steve mentioned, that the order from 2 years ago with bus grant, the state had to pass, with the last biennium budget, a resolution to continue that grant. Otherwise, those funds would have expired, and a lot of districts would have lost the money because they're all in the same situation we are. So thankful that they were able to extend the grant until we were able to get the buses.
And that grant offset 33%. about a
It
third
was
of the cost?
45,000 for each bus.
Okay.
It was either 45 or 35 for each bus.
I thought.
Three buses,
Yeah.
3 buses for around that amount.
Do we ever have too many buses?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I work with Steve and Curtis to make sure we don't have any more spares than we need. So as we will get those 5, we will retire 5. So no, we were a little heavy on spares before, but we've regulated that over the past years, and we're right where we need to be, where we have enough spares to use in case of emergency, but not so many that we're hoarding assets that could be sold for the betterment of the district.
Steve, do we know if we need to be concerned about the auto strike?
I haven't heard anything. I don't even, to be honest, I don't know if we would feel it at this point. We've been waiting so long. I haven't heard anything from any of the vendors that we would be going to. That very well could be information that comes back after this purchase.
So I think it would be useful to get that information, and then whether we need to hedge. If it's taking this long to get them, do we order 3?
Okay.
So, just something to think about.
Okay. If that is the case, then I would need to come back and up by 1 in another resolution, so. Okay, yeah, I can find out the information from my contacts, OSC, and proceed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Steve. Next up, we have our Director of Curriculum, Aaron Green, with the curriculum report for the month.
Hi, good evening. I have 5 items tonight for your consideration. The first 3 are overnight sports trips. So item 1 is an overnight trip for the Strongsville girls varsity basketball team. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, permission be granted to the Strongsville High School girls varsity basketball team to travel to Newark, Ohio, December 28th through 29th, 2023, to participate in the Newark Basketball Holiday Tournament. Transportation will be via school bus, and expenses will be paid with funds from the Girls Booster Basketball account. The second overnight trip is for Strongsville High School varsity hockey team. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that permission be granted to the Strongsville varsity hockey team to travel to Columbus, Ohio, to participate in the Chiller Thanksgiving Classic Hockey Tournament, which is November 24th through 26th of 2023. The $1,200 tournament fee will be paid by the district. Transportation will be via parents' vehicles, and any other expenses will be paid by the Strongsville Hockey Parent Association.
Mrs. Green, I just
Yes.
want to interject real quick.
Sure.
There was a typo in the subject where it said the 003 Athletic Fund. It should be the 300 Athletic Fund. I made the change to the agenda, so I'm going to hit refresh and it should update. There we go.
Would you like me to wait?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
The third and final overnight trip is for the Strongsville High School varsity hockey team. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that permission be granted for the Strongsville varsity hockey team to travel to Sylvania, Ohio, to participate in preseason scrimmages November 4th and 5th, 2023. Transportation will be via parents' vehicles, expenses paid by the Strongsville Hockey Parent Association. Item 4 is an out-of-state trip for the Strongsville High School Student Council Senior Executive Board. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that permission be granted to Natalia Buchwald, Student Council Advisor, to travel with the members of the Strongsville High School Student Council Senior Executive Board to Arlington, Virginia, to attend the LEAD National Student Leadership Conference, January 26th through 28th of 2024. Transportation will be via rented automobile driven by Natalia Buchwald, and expenses will be paid by Student Council. And the last item tonight for your consideration is a student-teacher memorandum of understanding with Notre Dame College. Be it resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the MOU between Notre Dame College and Strongsville City School District be approved as presented.
Any questions for Aaron?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Aaron. We have no items under student services this month, and so I'll turn it over to our assistant superintendent for the human resource report. Jenny?
Thank you. Under Human Resources, I have the following items for your consideration this evening. Number one, we have the retirement of a certificated staff member. Under two, we have appointments for non-certificated staff. 3, an appointment for a home instruction tutor. Under 4, appointments for certificated substitutes. Under 5, we have appointments for our non-certificated substitutes. Under 6, you met Colin earlier. We have the appointment for certificated athletic supplemental contract. 7, appointments for certificated supplemental contracts. Under 8, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. 9, changes in status for non-certificated staff. Under 10, a contract recommendation for a non-certificated staff member. Under 11, we have educational upgrades for certificated staff. Under 12, a stipend for a coordinator of gifted education. Under 13, leaves of absences for certificated staff, followed by leaves of absence for non-certificated staff. 15, unpaid leaves for certificated staff. 16, unpaid leaves for non-certificated staff. We have volunteers under 17, and then under 18, we have volunteer coaches. And then finally, under 19, there was a revision to the effective date of resignation for this non-certificated staff member. So it was actually on, instead of September 18th, it was moved to September 25th. And that concludes my report.
George, if you could you go in Jenny's report and click on number 7 for me? So one of the things we've talked about throughout the years is how we continue to invest in our school district and opportunities for our students. And as we talked about, we negotiated the contract with the teachers last spring, and a part of that was looking at what additional clubs, activities, music arts experiences can we have. So if you're watching at home or checking out the agenda, I would check out number 7. This does a nice job of listing new opportunities that have been brought to our students this school year because of this work. So you could see at the middle school new this year, we're going to have Power of the Pen. We're going to have Builders Club. We're going to have a math club. And although it's been there for a few years, we're now officially recognizing the Dungeons and Dragons Club as one of the 4 that were selected this year. We've had a variety of music groups that have participated, but those have been through the goodness and the volunteerism of our staff that we're now officially making a part of what we do. So you'll see at the middle school, jazz band and show choir. You've got chamber strings in there as well at the middle school. Those will be at the high school as well. And then some additional ones at the high school. You've got English Honor Society, Art Honor Society, Academic Challenge, mock trial, as well as National History Day, which I've learned through this process is not a day, but a long event and competition that students participate in. So a nice highlight of some of the new opportunities our kids are going to have. And I want to thank the board for using our available finances to reinvest in our district and our kids, and excited to extend those opportunities beyond the school day. We do not have any technology report for this month, so with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. Next, we have a report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, we held our September meeting on September 12th, and it was a quite exciting one, actually. We took a tour of 2 facilities in the building. One of them was the medical facilities, so things like pre-nursing and STNA courses run through this particular lab. And we got a full-on demonstration of the new technology that they have available. And I may be misremembering the term, but essentially they're mannequins, but they're like living, breathing mannequins. So as I was sitting there, like their chests are rising and falling, you can hear their breath sounds. We were able to touch them, and I could feel their pulse. It was a lot for someone like me who's not made for that kind of thing, but it was super cool. They each have their own monitor, as if, you know, in a hospital, you'd have a monitor. It can set the alarms off. They can have a heart attack, all these things. And there are 3 of them. And it's just fantastic technology that our students have access to through Polaris. So we're so grateful for that. And if your kids are interested in that field, you should check out Polaris because there's amazing learning tools available. Secondly, we toured the new vet tech lab that should be opening if the HVAC system would come in. So same thing, there's a delay there. So I got to see the little pee pad outside for the dogs and the surgical center. It was really not my night. But I did enjoy seeing like all the new opportunities for our students. And I know vet tech's a huge one right now. If anyone's called their vet lately, you can't get in for an ear infection for 3 weeks. So it's a very much needed skill in our community, and Polaris is seeking to meet that need. So once again, if you have students interested, great brand new facility there for them to learn in. And finally, one thing of note, it does not affect Strongsville in any way, but we have submitted paperwork to the state to restructure the terms at Polaris. Over the years, as they switched from 2-year terms to 3-year terms, the times when the terms expired kind of got off kilter, so that at the end of this current school year, 4 of the 7 board members are going to rotate off, which, as you can imagine, is problematic. So we have submitted the paperwork to state to have 2 districts next year take a 1-year term, and that will help us get back on track. So we were not one of those 2 districts. Our term will hold and will expire in 2025 is when my term will expire. But we do also have the rotating seat next year. So we'll have 2 members representing Strongsville next year. So I just wanted to keep you updated on that. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Report on legislation. Mr. Miko.
I think the news that I wanted to share with the community is last week, a Franklin County judge issued a temporary restraining order for upcoming changes to the State Board of Ed. 7 existing State Board of Education members sued the state of Ohio, saying that converting many of the responsibilities of the State Board of Ed to a cabinet-level position in the governor's office was unconstitutional. So a TRO, or a temporary restraining order, holding those changes off was issued, and there will be hearings on October 2nd, and we'll report back more when we know more. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Board liaison reports. City Council. Mr. Miko.
City Council did have a meeting last week on Monday, and a number of board members were in attendance, and the City Council, I want to make sure I'm factually correct, the City Council did adopt an endorsement of the renewal levy that we have, issue 14, so we thank them for their support, and I think that's the most important part of that meeting.
Thank you. Strongsville Education Foundation, Mrs. Kilbane.
I think the most important thing is November 11th is Casino Night, sponsored by the Strongsville Education Foundation. If you go to their website, you can either sponsor different tables or just buy tickets. I think they're $50. I think it's $50 a ticket. I don't want to look it up. It's on their website. And they do so many good things for our kids, like really support them if you can. Look them up. They're on Strongsville Education Foundation for Strongsville, and you can get all the information for that night. But it's November 11th, so put that on your calendar. I would say other than that, they're going to help us with solar eclipse glasses for April 8th. And I think with them, the PTA, and ourselves, the Strongsville, we will have enough glasses for all the kids that day. So that concludes that. Thank you.
Thank you. Strongsville PTA Council.
Oh,
Mrs.
that's me.
Kilbane.
It's me again. Well, this was their first meeting. The Their new president is Katie Hullebarger. Dr. Ryba talked at that meeting. He focused on financial transparency, reading literature, and promoting our tech. They approved their budget for the year. And I want to say and commend the middle school. September 22nd was the PTA's first fundraiser, and it's always a big one. And I heard that it went fantastic. The kids did great. There were no issues. So I want to say to the middle school, I'm proud of you. And this really helps because this is really one of our biggest fundraisers. So thanks to all the parents that volunteered and helped. And just continue to keep up with the PTA because they also do great things for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Board committee reports. Finance committee.
We have not met yet this year, and the next meeting is to be announced. Similarly, though we have met this year, the policy committee meeting is to be announced.
Facilities committee, our next meeting will be October 17th at 6:30 PM in this building. Business advisory committee.
We had our meeting on Friday, September 22nd, right here at 7:30 in the morning. We discussed year one refresher and year two enhancements of what needs to be done or what can be done. The way we started off was talking about how at the end of senior year, it's kind of like that Grease moment, like Grease Lightning, Grease the movie, and I never really thought of it this way, of that magical moment when you leave high school and your life begins, but that's really not how it works, and you have to be prepared before that happens, and how do we prepare kids for that. And we also talked about the fact of some kids might pick a career field, but they have absolutely no experience in it. So they might say, I really want to be an accountant, but they've never taken an accounting class or a business class. So it turns out they don't actually want to be an accountant once they get to see that. We discussed the idea of maybe implementing 9th, 10th, and 11th graders in it because of some of the restraints our seniors are seeing. For example, some places you need to be 18 years old in order to volunteer or have shadowing experiences. Our 12th grade enrollment is 450, but 85 of those students go to Polaris. 190 take part in the College Credit Plus program, and that semester ends on May 12th. And there are 175 students that are testing for AP, and that testing is May 6th through 17th, with the last day of school being May 24th. So the restraints and the time restraints with that, how do we get past that? What do we do? Should we open the option of having a junior capstone so that more kids can have the ability to participate in this? And we talked about the metrics for determining success, whether that be interviewing those businesses that have shadowing opportunities, whether that be the teachers, then interviewing the students to figure out the success from that, and also discuss the possibility of bringing in alumni who have been part of the program to come in and speak about how that program helped them. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, November 17th at 7:30 a.m., and we invite whoever would like to be a part of that to do that if you're a local business, and if you want breakfast, we serve breakfast there. Well, I don't serve breakfast, but they serve breakfast there, and there was a pretty good maple bacon something or other the other day, so just saying. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type-action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Sorry, George. When you're ready, you can take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
motion carries. Next, we have superintendent's timely information.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. As George puts the slides up on the board, we've got some exciting things that are going on across the district that we want to highlight. First, we had our first ever literacy on the lawn at Sarara Elementary School recently. So our reading specialist, Ms. Coleman, and kindergarten teacher, Ms. Coyne, organized an event and many special guest readers from our police and fire department to go out on the lawn, hear some books being read by some great community folks, and celebrate a love of reading. So beautiful night. Hopefully you've seen it on social media. It's been promoted, but a great night, a great idea. And the reading's a huge bonus, but the sense of community and being out there with your friends and families is also special. So great job to Sarar for bringing that idea to life, and I'm sure that will be a continuing tradition into the future. As we move on over to the middle school, who doesn't like to do a project that you get to eat at the end of it? So our sixth grade art classes, we're learning about the color wheel and secondary and primary colors. So they took Oreos, used colored edible icing to ice those. So they learned about the color wheel and then got to enjoy. Hopefully we had gloves or clean hands as we were going down that pathway, but got to enjoy some Oreos at the end. So Ms. Ganem and Ms. Ray do a phenomenal job with our art students building a love of the art. And what I like about all of our art teachers, Ms. Blumel included, is you don't have to be the greatest artist in the world, but you just have to have an appreciation of creativity, and they'll find something that meets your needs as well. And you know, one of the things we did in this upcoming school year is we expanded art offerings and opportunities for kids to take art, so that's a good thing as well. And then moving on to the high school, I thought this was really cool. So we had a collaboration between the Spanish department and the English department. As you can see, Ms. Barba, who for this was teaching Spanish 3, Ms. Yamo teaching English 10, collaborated a unit. They were both talking about how tone impacts the meaning of messages and works. So they collaborated together, combined their classes in the Media Center, and sophomores and juniors had the opportunity to get together to look at different mediums of song, artwork, and poetry with South American influence to look how tone and that message changed depending on the tone that was used, and gave kids different perspectives from English class or Spanish class. So again, demonstrates one experience that our students had that exemplifies the phenomenal teachers that are working to meet our organizational purpose of inspiring and empowering today's learners to build tomorrow's leaders. So a couple great examples of the work being done throughout the district, and to continue to engage with our district and staff or parents and teachers coming together to support students. Just a reminder that parent-teacher conferences are coming up, and you can see the schedule on the screen. It's on the calendar on our website and our principals' newsletters as well. So please pay attention to those newsletters as to whether it's come on in and see who's available, or whether it's a scheduled conference with the team or teachers. More details will be provided there, but we encourage people to reach out and continue to collaborate with our teachers on these nights. And with that, that concludes timely information.
Thank you. Next, we have board bylaws and policies. We do have several bylaws and policies on their third reading tonight. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the listed bylaws and policies. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Kilbane, motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Do we have any questions or discussion?
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
I'd like to suggest we table and pull off the adoption, I don't have the policy number in front of me, but the one about security cameras. It is a,
7740.01.
one more time?
7740.01.
Thank you. Yes.
Video surveillance and electronic monitoring.
So the reason I think we should table it is it is a new policy for us, and the technology is constantly changing. And I think it needs a little more baking to make sure we get it right before we adopt it. So if the board agrees, I'd like to table that.
Which policy was it? Because I don't.
7740.01.
If you scroll down, it's towards the bottom.
Video.
Above.
Oh, I get it. I thank you. I got it. I got it.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about tabling that, or are we all in agreement? Okay, all right.
I'm gonna change the motion just to include that. So the motion currently reads, be resolved upon the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the listed bylaws and policies with the removal
Okay.
of policy. Was it 7540.01?
7740.01.
Just give me a second. So be it resolved upon the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the listed bylaws and policies with the removal of policy 7740.01, video surveillance and electronic monitoring, which will be reviewed at a later time.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have Board of Education other, miscellaneous. Does anyone have any others?
I have one. I'd just like to remind the community that we have a survey about our facilities plan. It is open until Friday at 5 p.m. And your input is sought and important to us, so please take the time to fill out the survey, and it's available on our website. Thank you.
Any other?
Just, it's not available on our website. We've sent it out to our parents multiple times, our community people on our listserv. We put it in the Strongsville Post, and we will put it on the website tomorrow.
It will be available
Yeah,
on our
there-
website.
I just want to
If you're
remind
watching this tomorrow.
I just want to remind everybody that this is homecoming weekend for Strongsville. Our queen will be crowned on Friday night at the football game. And we also have a group of alumni that will be honored at the game. Our athletic booster, or our Athletic Hall of Fame is having their inductions. So that group will be also honored at the football game. And then there's a dinner on Saturday night, and there are still tickets available on their website. Any others? Hearing none. We'll move on to meeting notifications. And it's blank.
That's,
Oh, mine's blank. Okay, thank you. Oh, there it goes. Thank you. A regular Board of Education meeting work session will be held Thursday, October 12th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the meeting room of the Administration Building, 18199 Cook Avenue, Strongsville, Ohio. And a regular Board of Education meeting will be held Thursday, October 26th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the meeting room of the Administration Building, 18199 Cook Avenue, Strongsville, Ohio. We do have need tonight for executive session to discuss.
To consider the employment of a public employee and to consider the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcik, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion passes. We will enter into executive session at approximately 8:15. We do not see need to continue in public, so I want to wish everybody a good night.